Okay, everyone, it is 5 after, and thank you everyone for coming tonight to Practicing While Black, the Modern Pharmacist Unscripted. My name is Star Shands, Dr. Star Shands, and I am your host moderator tonight. Let me just share my screen. So, one moment. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay. So again, hi everyone. My name is Dr. Star Shands, and I am your host today for Practicing While Black, the Modern Pharmacist Unscripted, and this is brought to you by the New Practitioners Network. I am the New Practitioners Network chair, and let's get started. So a little bit about New Practitioners Network. We focus mainly on pharmacists within their first 5 years of professional practice. So we have a committee who's always looking for, we're always looking for new members. If you are interested in getting involved with NAPHA, and specifically New Practitioners Network, if you're a new pharmacist practicing 5 years or less, you've only been practicing 5 years or less, please join us. We are more than welcome to have you, but everyone, please, if you're hearing me right now, please stop and follow at NAPHA New Practitioners on Instagram. We do have an Instagram, so you can keep up with the latest that we have going on. So if you do have an Instagram, which most of you, I hope, have an Instagram, please follow at NAPHA New Practitioners on IG. No underscores or anything, just straight on the screen. Thank you. Okay. And let's get started with our wonderful panelists. So first, I have a lot of hats on today. I'm the host, moderator, and I'm also a panelist. So again, I'm Dr. Star Shands. I am an ambulatory care clinical pharmacy specialist for Indian Health Service in Gallup, New Mexico. I've been in my current position for 2.5 years. I graduated from the illustrious Hampton University in May of 2018. I was previously a community pharmacist the first year of my career until I transitioned to this role. I currently work in the anticoagulation space and will be starting on March 1st, a diabetes pharmacist position at my current hospital. So I'm completely immersed into the ambulatory care space. And again, I am the New Practitioners Network chair for the National Pharmaceutical Association. Thank you all for joining today. And next, our wonderful president, Dr. Ryan Marable.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Ryan Marable, originally from Dayton, Ohio. I'm currently a drug information pharmacist within the medical communications team with Eversana. I'm based out of Oakland, California. I'm currently working remotely out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I have previous experience in community pharmacy, working as pharmacy manager, staff pharmacist, and patient care focused pharmacist. So definitely interested in this dialogue this evening. Feel that being a Black pharmacist is very important, just as important as being a pharmacist in general. So looking forward to seeing all the questions and commentary from the full panel, as well as from the audience as well. So looking forward to some great dialogue today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marable. Dr. Prince.
Hello, everyone. Prince Chijoke. I'm a 2015 grad of Howard University College of Pharmacy. I started my career with Walmart, moved to the VA, spent some time as an Army pharmacist, And then I left pharmacy actually for a couple of years and did consulting. And then I came back to healthcare, to a role with allergan aesthetics in pharmaceuticals. So I've done a lot of different things. So I have a lot of different things I could talk about, but happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Keller.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eden Keller. I am currently a research fellow in academia and family medicine at University of Illinois at Chicago. I am a 2020 graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana. So I am fresh out here in the working world. And I don't know, I'm just really excited about tonight, share my experiences and hopefully give you guys some encouragement and tips. So bring the questions.
Yes. Thank you so much. As you can see tonight, we have a very dynamic panel. I just want to say a few words before we get started. As all of you probably know, working in the pharmacy world, or if you're a student, because I hope there are some students on the call, pharmacy has greatly changed over the course of 50, 60 years. Back in the 60s, there were about 5,000 pharmacists. Now, 4.9% of pharmacists in the US are Black. So that's rough. That's over 15,000 pharmacists. So you can see the growth that has been had since wow, it's been a long time, because that's a very long time. So we want to talk a lot about a lot of different things tonight. Disclaimer, because I do want to give a disclaimer. This is a safe space. I want this to be a guided conversation full of advice, full of tips, full of real experiences. We don't really want to, I don't want you to leave here feeling sad, boggled down with the state of the world right now. I want you to leave inspired, encouraged, and I want you to know more than when you started. Like, I want you to leave more filled with more encouragement, more inspiration to keep going. Okay, so let's get started with some questions. So this is our question answer period. If anyone who is listening has any questions, please put them in the chat and our panelists will address the questions. So if you have any questions, please don't be shy. Let's get started. So first and foremost, what has been your experience practicing while Black? That's probably a very loaded question, but anyone is free to answer. Whoever wants to go first. What is your experience? What has your experience been practicing while Black?
I think we should start with the most recent graduate. I think we want to hear that fresh perspective. So I think that's the best way. Don't you guys agree?
Yes.
Let's do that.
Oh, sure. I have two very specific interactions that have come to mind, actually more than two, but anyway. If I could sum it up, it would be, it's been kind of eye-opening and also shocking, because I've had several situations, especially being in a clinical space, where I previously did a PGY1 residency also at UIC, and being in a clinical space, Black people, especially older Black people, just aren't used to seeing somebody that is their skin tone who is actually telling them what to do when it comes to their healthcare or their medication. I've had comments received like, "Oh, I thought you were just a student or something." And I was like, "No, I'm the pharmacist." And they're like, "Wow, I didn't know there were Black doctors. It's good to see you." Or I've had a patient myself and the physician go in to speak with a patient in a clinic, and the physician, runs down the plan that me and the physician have already discussed. And then we start to head out. And the patient stops to ask me to stay behind. I was like, so what do you think about what we just said? Like, is that okay? You talking about medication changes and this and that. What do you think? And, and it's really, really weird because they really do almost hold us to a different, like they want to hear from us. So I think practicing as a Black person has almost given me like this extra sense of responsibility to other Black people. Yeah.
And I guess I'll just piggyback off of that, and definitely, some of the things that you just mentioned, Dr. Keller, I can totally echo those, and I've walked through those same types of experiences. But just when I just reflect back on, my experience within the profession, hearing from patients and they explain that they don't normally see, Black professionals. That's really true. I'm sure many of us who've been on Instagram and on Facebook have seen the viral post that went around that mentioned that 4.9% of pharmacists are Black, and I'm one of them. And that's been great. It's been very empowering. And I just think back to, when I was in school between 2009 and 2013, I hadn't really seen other Black pharmacy students like myself until my third year in school, because like social media just wasn't out there to where you could see people who look like you. So, those types of things did make me feel that, maybe is this really for me, or, should I really be here? And those same types of feelings that I experienced, as a student, our patients feel those same types of way. Like, should I be here with these, with these doctors? Should I listen to what they're telling me? Should I listen to my cousin who told me to do a certain thing? Like, so I feel that it's our responsibility as Black professionals, whether we're pharmacists, physicians who also make up less than 5% of the medical field within, medical doctors, a part of their field. We have a responsibility to be out there and be on the forefront and to be as visible as possible, because, we can not only inspire other professionals, but we also can inspire people from our communities to live as healthy as possible, so they can continue to contribute to their families and their community as well. So I look at it as, when I think of, what's my experience as a pharmacist, I think it's great responsibility. We stand on the shoulder of giants. We have people who have come before us, who have knocked down barriers and hurdles that I don't know if I could be able to accomplish those things, but they've been able to do it. So I look at it like, okay, this is my time to step in and to do my part until my time is no longer and I can pass the torch. So, I love being a pharmacist. I'm a Black man at the end of the day, and it's just the, part of the process, and I enjoy every step of the way.
Yeah, I'll jump in with my experience. In one of my positions, I actually worked at a place where most of the leadership was Black. So a little bit different than a lot of people's experiences, I assume. But one of the things that was interesting to me is that as we started expanding and we're thinking about hiring more people, there was this fear from our chief that he was worried about hiring too many Black people because we already had too many in his mind. And I think something like this probably will come up in one of the later questions that we have for the panel, but there was just this sense that if anything was going wrong because our leadership was Black, it was going to be highlighted more. I don't know, something that I experienced. I don't know if anyone else had similar things, if like they had a manager that was Black, but that's what I remember.
It's almost like, I think it's almost like you don't want to overstep your boundary. Like, that there's a need for other Black professionals to be a part of the process, you know that you could tap someone and give them the opportunity, but you know that potentially you could be held responsible for that individual. So it's almost like it's just a challenge. It's almost like a catch-22 because you're responsible for what that other person's actions are. Whereas non-African American or non-minoritized individuals, they don't have that same type of pressure. They could give someone an opportunity, and that person they given the opportunity could totally bomb, and it'll be just fine. Like nothing will happen. Whereas with us as Black professionals, it could turn out a totally different way. It may not. It may be just fine. You could give that individual an opportunity and it not work out, and nothing happened. But you have to, that is a reality, and it's an unfortunate reality, but it's something that you have to think about even when you are attempting to do the right thing and give individuals that opportunity to make a difference in their, in their environment that they're in professionally.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback on that, in that same environment, there was one specific incident where one of the white pharmacists, she made a comment that we had too many Black people interviewing, or as in that our entire interview crew was Black, and it made sense because all the leadership was Black. So we need some more white people on this panel, which was interesting to hear. And then like when she sat in on one of the interviews and it was her friend that was interviewing, she like gave her friend the questions. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. But yeah, it's interesting when that dynamic is switched, the kind of comments you'll hear, which probably reinforced his thinking that, okay, people are looking at us because there's so many Black people running the show here.
I'll definitely piggyback off of that about some of the experiences I've had regarding race as well as age. So when I graduated from pharmacy school, Hampton has a 6-year program. So I was 24 when I started. I started my career in community. I was at Walgreens in Richmond, Virginia. So I'm from Virginia originally. And at the time I was hired, I was not only like one of the few Black pharmacists who were hired in my year, I was the youngest pharmacist in the entire district. So every time that I had to talk to a patient, it was, oh, how old are you? Oh, I need to speak to the pharmacist. And I'm like, I am the pharmacist. And I always felt like I was being questioned, like my knowledge base was being questioned. And I definitely felt like I was being watched more than my white or like non-Black counterparts. I felt like everything I did was micromanaged. If I felt like I was getting reprimanded more than my other colleagues. It just was extremely uncomfortable. And so then on the flip side of that, after I left that position and I came to New Mexico and I served primarily the Native American population, it went from bias, it went from microaggressions to fascination because a lot of the patient population I serve has not seen a lot of Black people at all. I've had patients trying to relate to me because they're trying to get to know me. I've been referred to as colored. That's how far back, like far removed. So it was more so a lack of exposure to Black people, African Americans. So that was also very interesting. I got a lot of questions about my hair, about like where exactly. It was always, where are you from? Because they know you're not from here because they don't see Black people. So of course you're not from here. I feel like I've had a variety of experiences, and it can be difficult to navigate. With that being said, we have a wonderful question from Adrian. How did you navigate imposter syndrome despite obtaining your PharmD? Great question. Who on the panel would love to dive into that question more? Who would love to dive into that question? I would love to hear from anyone on the panel.
Yeah, I can jump in. So in my case, it actually didn't really hit until I left for consulting. As I went to a firm where the majority of people I worked with were either Ivy League grads or top 10 business school grads. And so coming in without an MBA and being this only pharmacist person that they've ever met, was like, okay, am I sure I can actually do this job that all these people learned and practiced on how to do when they were in business school? But what I quickly found out is that the same way I was impressed by them having experiences at Harvard and Stanford, et cetera, they were all impressed that I was a pharmacist or had a PharmD. Because in their minds, they were thinking I could never do that much school, especially not in the sciences. So once I started doing the work and I could have the same conversations my colleagues were having and my supervisors were having, it quickly started to fade away, that distinction for me.
Yeah, I feel like in any new role that you take on as a professional, there's always going to be a learning curve, and especially in that beginning phase, whether you're, you know, a recent graduate or if you've been practicing for many years, you know, once you, you know, fall into that new area of unknown, you can feel, you know, as if you don't belong. But I feel like if you're able to lean on, you know, your knowledge base, lean on your network, and you're able to add value to whatever team that you're a part of, you shouldn't you shouldn't doubt yourself. You should understand that you truly are doing the work and you're leaning in and you're adding that value to your team. Then hopefully you're able to escape that imposter syndrome. But it's such a phenomenon that happens that you can't really control. But one thing that I just try to, you know, remain focused. You know, I speak positively to what I am able to add to my teams. I always seek feedback, so that way you know that that you're actually adding something that's meaningful. And honestly, I don't know if we've gotten there or if that is a question, but you know, seeking feedback is one thing that's unique as a Black professional and as a Black pharmacist. You know, especially working within, you know, a predominantly white institution or within a role where you don't have other Black professionals in leadership roles, is that I found that when it's time for feedback, it's somewhat soft. It's not necessarily like as firm and direct and succinct in what is being provided back to the individual. So, you know, as a Black professional, I found that I have to, you know, foster that relationship a bit more than if it was a Black professional, because, you know, if I have someone who's a mentor, they're going to tell me what I need to know. They're going to hold me accountable. They're going to say what they need to say to make sure that I'm staying on track. Whereas if I'm not working with a Black professional, I'm not necessarily going to get that. So, you know, being able to be open and ask those questions and being comfortable with them being able to tell you what it is that you need to hear, and making, I hate to say this, but making them feel comfortable with talking to you and telling you what it is that you need to do to improve. And that way, you know exactly what you need to do to be able to perform. And if for some reason, as a professional, you're not able to perform, at least there's not as many unknowns. You're not feeling that you're trying to feel your way through the dark and identify different things or different gaps in your job that you're missing. You know, if you're able to ask for that routine and regular feedback, you can address those areas and be able to accomplish them.
Just to piggyback off of that, navigating imposter syndrome. First and foremost, a huge shout out to Dr. Leonard Edlow for providing so much content and very some really hard-hitting advice that I will be bringing to this presentation today. So thank you, Dr. Edlow. Something that resonated with me and I also talked to Dr. Edlow about this and Dr. Walleen Bullard about this, so thank you, was always having mentors. It is so very important to have mentors who feed into you, who tell you, like Dr. Marable said, who really tell you what you need to know. You have to also remember who you are. You have to know who you are, what you're doing, what is your why. Knowing your why, honing into your why. Why are you in pharmacy school? Why did you become a pharmacist? Out of all the different careers that there are, why pharmacy? You are supposed to be here. Like, it's not like, oh, you have to fight for a seat at the table, or, oh, I don't know if I belong in the room. Yes, you belong in the room. You're supposed to be in the room. You're supposed to be at the table. And you can't forget where you came from. So with that being said, if you have been afforded opportunities to succeed, pay it forward. Mentor those who are coming behind you. Like, don't forget, you know, how you got there. If there's something that you needed and someone gave you the tools, the resources that you needed, like, do that for somebody else. You have to be proud of yourself because you've accomplished a lot. If you've gotten into pharmacy school, you graduated from pharmacy school, all of these things, like, you have to realize that you are capable of so much. And Dr. Walleen Bullard actually gave me this bit of advice that sometimes when you are the first person, like the first person at your position who is Black, or you're the only person who is Black, it may be uncomfortable. And sometimes when speaking to other colleagues, you may feel like you're the exception. You're the exception in your workplace. You're the exception in whatever opportunity you've been afforded. You are not the exception. You are the standard. So with that being said, it's with imposter syndrome, it's hard, but you have to navigate through that, because imposter syndrome comes from questioning whether you're supposed to be there. If you're supposed to have this opportunity, you are. If you were not supposed to have this opportunity, you wouldn't have it.
Yeah. I didn't automatically have anything to say for this because still kind of sitting through some imposter syndrome myself. But I think slowly but surely, and for anybody who, like, it took me forever to like really even understand what imposter syndrome even like meant until I realized I was living it. But you just kind of feel like you, like Star was saying, like you question like if you're supposed to be there, or you question, can I do this? Like, am I capable of doing these things? And you 100% are, but it's just that kind of like self-doubt that starts creeping in more and more. And I think what's helped me so far is, again, what Star was saying, is like knowing who you are. You have to not only know who you are, but you have to like go back and remind yourself, like, I did this. Like, go back, like if you're a recent grad like me, like I remember when I was like I was multitasking. I was in all these organizations, like my grades were great. And I'm like, I am that person. Like, that is who I am. And I'm just trying to like show everybody else, or like bring that person to my workplace. And what I found recently that has been helping is slowly get back into it. Like, you can't just like jump back in and be like, well, this is who I am, so I'm gonna like take on all these projects. Like, ease your way in, like one at a time. I'm taking like tiny little leadership here, or taking just a little bit more responsibility at work, and slowly but surely, like and when you do that, you're gaining more confidence and reminding yourself like, okay, I can do this. Like, so it's definitely, I would say, and I don't know if it's like this for everybody, but it's kind of crippling, I want to say, almost, when you have imposter syndrome, because it's like you don't want to function, or you're scared to like do things because you don't know if you can do it, or you're questioning your ability to do it. And so it's rebuilding that is also rebuilding like your confidence and renewing, like kind of like returning to self almost. So I think that's been like the biggest thing for me, is just like slowly but surely like going back to like, okay, this feels like me. Like, and reminding yourself every day. Like I go back and like I look at old Snapchats and I'm like, oh wow, like I did that, you know? So I think that's like super important. And also Star mentioned like having mentors, talking to those people who have known you and they're like, what are you talking about? You know, you need to hear somebody say like, you 100% can do this. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why is this even a question? Because also hearing it from other people helps too. So yeah.
Well, we have gotten so many questions in the chat, and we're going to get through all these questions. I'm going to try my best to get through all of them. A great question that I saw. So we spoke about, because there can be, and we'll get more into this because there's questions related to this, but yes, we may have experienced more like feeling like you're being watched more, reprimanded more, feeling like your knowledge base is questioned, being privy to implicit, explicit bias. How did you all, if you've experienced that, or when you experienced that, how did you best navigate that environment? When put in that situation, how did you navigate? How did you work your way through out in that environment? Dr. Marable?
Repeat that last portion again, please.
So if you have been, if or when you've been in an environment where you felt like you were privy to implicit or explicit bias, microaggressions, what have you, how did you best navigate that environment?
That's a great question. I try to, I pay very close attention to the words that people say. So I would say that there have been times where I've worked alongside a team. So I won't even say like a situation where it's a superior. This would be someone who actually reported to me, and there were some situations where there were some microaggressions. So that's a unique position. You know, as a young Black pharmacist, I have, you know, possibly a staff pharmacist or an intern or technicians. And sometimes that could be a unique situation because they're not necessarily used to taking orders or having an authority figure in my position. So, you know, there were times where I saw that, but at the same time, you know, I think that the conversation has come up this evening as it relates to, you know, seeking out advice and wisdom from those who have performed those duties. So I definitely utilize, you know, my mentors as a resource and a sounding board to get some ideas. So one of the best things that I could do anytime that I felt that there was some type of discrepancy or some type of bias in situations where potentially individuals may have gone behind my back to either seek additional information when I've given a directive or a direct order to perform a certain task, you know, there's always an opportunity to, you know, have a conversation and to open up those lines of communication to make sure that those expectations are set. Typically, when you're able to do that and you're able to set that clear understanding, that typically can mitigate the situation from happening. It's not a sure shot, but you know, if you have a situation where there's, you know, subtle situations that could potentially impact your performance or your productivity, it's just very important as a professional to address those and document as much as you can. Have those conversations in real time, so don't let things just linger and go by. You know, we have a lot of responsibilities as pharmacists, and we can't let certain things get us off track from upholding our responsibility because we are here to serve our patients. And things like, biases and microaggressions, things like that, that can just throw us off of our track. So, doing whatever is necessary, having those conversations directly with the individuals in question is critical.
Just piggybacking off of that, I completely agree. It's so important to receive, like, if you have questions about something, reaching out to a trusted colleague or mentor. And one person I used to reach out to when I was in community and I was just a new pharmacist, I reached out to my old pharmacy manager, who was my manager when I was an intern. And she was not Black, she was white, and she gave me so much great advice. And it's very, very, very important. Please document, and just ask for feedback, ask for, okay, how would you navigate this situation? Also, a point that was made actually by Dr. Walleen Bullard when speaking to her regarding this topic is there's a point. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. All points are definitely validated. They should be validated, but it can be assumed that something may be racial or have malintent. But what if it isn't? What if it's a lack of knowledge, a lack of exposure, a lack of cultural competency? Because I've also spoken to some of my non-Black colleagues about certain situations. And of course it'd be like, oh, that wasn't racial, that wasn't discrimination, that wasn't, but in some situations, it actually may not be racially motivated. So playing devil's advocate, what if it's not? What if it's just a lack of exposure, a lack of cultural competency in situations?
I was gonna say that's a good point, Dr. Shans, but that goes right into the point of making sure that you're having regular and open dialogue with the teams that you're a part of, because it's not necessarily to have a conversation to confront them like, hey, you said something in a meeting yesterday and I didn't like that. I was sad. Like, no, it's, you want to give an individual the opportunity to clarify themselves. Right. You want to open up that space and allow them to say what they have to say. Like, sometimes it is just a misunderstanding. Well, I would say the majority of times in my professional history, it's typically just been a misunderstanding where the expectations weren't set or they just didn't necessarily, if it was someone who was superior to me, they just didn't necessarily know how to give that feedback in an efficient way. So, when you're able to ask those questions and give them that opportunity, that can sometimes resolve the situation. And sometimes it confirms like what your initial thought was. So, but you at least want to give an individual the opportunity. So opening up the door for it.
I definitely agree. Because like you said, it could just be a misunderstanding. It could very well just be a matter of just a miscommunication, misunderstanding. It comes down to also providing safe spaces for your colleagues to ask or get clarification on certain things. So that's also something to keep in mind. Let's go through the questions. From Gabriella, what advice would you give in cultivating this community of, this community beyond social circles? So BIPOC community beyond social circles. What advice would you give about that?
My follow-up would be like, if you're still a student, then I guess starting organizations like SNAFA on your campus, or have you already done that?
I don't know if I can turn on my microphone and answer that question. Thank you. So yes, NAFA is an organization within our campus, but the entire e-board is, there's not a person of color on it. So it's kind of hard to, yeah, it's kind of hard to navigate that. I'm trying to create another organization that could potentially be a subcommittee with them to kind of cultivate this environment for students, because we definitely have students that identify as a member of the BIPOC community, but I'm not exactly sure how to attract them to it.
And I would say that, starting with SNAFA, I got my start in SNAFA as I'm sure as many individuals that are on this call, but with SNAFA as growing and becoming as diverse as it is, that's such a great thing, and seeing the impact that they're able to make in communities, not only in this nation, but worldwide, is tremendous. But I always, like to reiterate to my mentees and students that I coach, is that SNAFA that's home base. So if you're a minoritized student, if you're a Black student, if you have a passion for being in communities and raising awareness for pharmacy as a profession for individuals and students of color, that should always be your first resource, and you should consider that a home base. So don't necessarily feel that you have to go outside of that to get the job done. If you have to advocate more within the organization, you should absolutely do that, because it was founded for that purpose. And I'm sure that there are maybe one or two founders that are currently on this call that will most certainly echo that point.
Yes, there are definitely looks like some founders on this call. I definitely agree with that point. SNAFA is home base. I can definitely say that my network, when I first was starting to attend conferences and network as a pharmacy student, SNAFA was it. I have said when I was in pharmacy school, and since I graduated this year, 4 years ago, I still say, if you are not a part of SNAFA, you are wrong. You must join SNAFA as a student. It is key. It is that the connections I've made in SNAFA helped me post grad. So I definitely agree with that statement. The next question, just to keep things going, what have you found rewarding as a pharmacist? And this question is open to anyone. I can start off. So what I found rewarding as a pharmacist is, with my current position, the patient interaction has been wonderful. I work in the ambulatory care space, so I work with clinics. I love when patients have conversations with me. I love to talk. And if a patient wants to talk to me about their life along with their medications, because they have all types of questions, I am here for every single question. And I love having the time to talk to each and every patient. I can't tell you how many times I've had patients just thank me for listening to them, for validating them, for like them feeling like they can't even talk to their PCP about certain issues because they felt like they didn't have time to. Has been the most rewarding part of my career by far. Now being a pharmacist, remembering some of the things that I went through as a student, being a mentor has been extremely rewarding for me. Like mentorship, if you are a pharmacist, a practicing pharmacist, in the field, out of the field, mentorship is important. Pay it forward. That has been extremely rewarding for me. When I was in community, having foundational skills, I greatly appreciated from my career start as a community pharmacist. Having those foundational skills that helped me with my current position was extremely beneficial for me. Just the field is great. Being a pharmacist is great. I'm proud to be a Black pharmacist, a Black female pharmacist. There, where I work, there are not a lot of people who look like me, and I'm grateful to just make an impact, whether it's in one patient's life or hundreds of patients. I'm happy to make an impact all the same.
So I think for me, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, was just like those interactions with my patients of color and being able to connect with them, and they wouldn't have been able to connect with, my colleague who is not Black. That definitely makes me feel it's just super rewarding. Um, I think maybe it's kind of similar to when you have a Spanish speaking patient and then they have a provider who speaks Spanish. I think it's the same thing when you have a Black patient and the patient sees that their provider or their pharmacist is Black and they understand, or that they can communicate with them on a different level that other people cannot. And I can't think of a good example right now, but it's there, you know? So I think, and then even having those, I've had, especially like older people come and tell me like, oh, there was one guy who literally said, I didn't know there were Black doctors. It's good to see you. So it's literally things like that is what those are the rewarding things for sure. So.
Just to follow up a little bit on that, thank you, Dr. Keller. Health equity is extremely important. Having something very important that Dr. Keller said, having patients who understand you, who look like you, who may not understand all the medical jargon, who may not understand everything that their doctor is telling them, being able to interpret, being able to explain it in a way that your patients understand. Dare I say, code switching. We've, like, Black people, we know the term code switching, where we've learned all the terms in school. We can explain it to patients who may not understand otherwise, because one, they're not in the profession, and two, because of, for whatever reason, whether it's health literacy issues, what have you. It is very important. These interactions that you have with people of color or even non-people of color, I've explained so many things to patients and they're like, thank you so much for taking the time to explain this to me, because I had no idea what my doctor was saying. And it's extremely important. So the next question we had was from William. How important is it to set career benchmarks and milestones for yourself, professionally and personally? Would it be worth hiring a career coach or seek out a mentor within your workplace or professional organizations? Anyone can answer this question, whoever feels inclined.
I don't really have a great answer for this one, but just to kind of like start off, like I think it would be important to kind of like at least, well, like when you say benchmarks or milestones, I just think of basically like goal setting. And I think it's 100% important, because how else are you going to like keep going? Then I feel like if you don't have goals or milestones or like striving for something, then it's very easy to get stagnant and stuck in one place if you're not like constantly achieving to do something else or do something different. So I think it's very important to kind of, some advice that I got once was, which this was in relation to college, but in your career, if you picture yourself at the end of your career, what do you want it to look like? What do you hope to accomplish? So if you are, 60, 70, I don't know what the age is, and you're ready to retire, what do you want that to look like? Do you, want to have had, awards, publications, a sea of students that admire you? Like, what do you want that to look like? And then scale it back and go backwards and be like, what are the steps that I need to do to make this ending picture happen? Like, this happy ending that I want, what does that look like along the way? So, and I mean, you can get as specific as you want and or just big picture as you want, but I think that's some pretty kind of solid advice that I think you can apply to with your career and almost any other situation too.
Thank you, Dr. Keller. Dr. Chijoke, Dr. Marable, do y'all have any follow-ups to that question?
Yeah, I would think something else that's been important for me going out through my career was looking for someone at my job that looked like me, like the older version of me. Essentially, like I found often that individual is going to like use you as a proxy to teach you all the things they wish they would have done at your age or your stage in your career. And you end up forming these really interesting relationships where you can learn a lot from someone from a different generation that's been in your shoes before, and can walk you through some of these dynamics. And it might not even just be about career stuff, just things about like life. Like let's say you're planning to buy a house or something, and they're like, well, this is what I did and this is what you shouldn't do. A lot of that I think can be beneficial. So when you think about mentorship, think about it beyond just what you're getting out of your career, because they can mentor you in a lot of different ways.
And I totally agree with that. Anything that I've been able to accomplish in my short career has all been with regards to my alignment. So I've always tried to align myself with great individuals. So just like Dr. Chijoke mentioned, identifying those people, within your professional circle, whether it's within your current job, or if you're a part of an organization like SNAFA or NAFA, just identifying those people and having those conversations and truly adding value to them. So when you do speak with them, bring something to the table, and that way they can continue to pour into you as well, and it kind of keeps them sharp. So it's typically a mutually beneficial situation. And I've found great success in ensuring that my personal network has been strong. I try to stay as sharp and as strong as possible in everyone around me as well. And it has seemed to help.
I'll chime in on that as well. I would say mentorship. When I was a student, especially since I graduated from pharmacy school, mentorship is extremely important. I personally have been motivated to, when I was a student, I envisioned how I wanted my my career to look, and that definitely changed after I graduated. But mentors kept me in line and reminded me of myself. Like one of my mentors, Dr. Terry Smith Moore, who I actually met through NAFA, actually always quick to remind me of who I am when I forget, or if I speak negatively, like, I don't know if I can do this. I actually, when I accepted my current position, around the time I accepted my current position, I didn't even know. So when we talk about imposter syndrome, you doubt if you can even do something. You doubt if you can even achieve something. So having mentors who are like, no, stop. I'm going to stop you in your tracks, because we're not going down this rabbit hole of negativity. You can do this. You can do this. The mentors that I've had personally and professionally in my career who have encouraged me when I spoke about things that I want to accomplish, things that I really, really think I can do. They've been an encouragement. And then also like family, your family can be like accountability partners. It's very important to have people who hold you accountable to the goals that you set. Like when you go to pharmacy school, hey, I'm going to graduate and I want this type of job. And okay, I changed my mind. I want this kind of job. What plan do you have? And let's work our way down. I want to be in this part of pharmacy. I want to get this board certification. I want to do this. I want to experience this in my career. Okay, what steps do you need to do to make that happen? Like, what are your negotiables? What are your non-negotiables in your career? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? How far are you willing to go to make sure that you are on track? You are achieving what you said you're going to do. It's a matter of it. Like pharmacy school is hard, post-grad is hard, but what can make it easier is when you have a support system and that you are doing everything that you can to hold yourself accountable and achieve what you set out to achieve. So when you ask like how important is it to set career benchmarks and milestones, I think it's important because in pharmacy, you're forever a student. You're always a student. I definitely make a point. I need to learn more. I'm always raising the bar. When I achieve this goal, I try not to get complacent in my career. I try, okay, well, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? But with that being said, also be happy and be content with where you are and how much you've accomplished. Does anyone have any follow-ups to this question before we move on to the next?
Dr. Schnell, I think you covered it very well.
Okay, let's see. Okay. This question, okay. We're gonna answer this next question, then we're going to do a poll just because I am so in love with this question. From Sheldon, from Xavier. So excited to be on the call with such successful Black leaders. Thank you. What or who inspired you to keep going during your toughest moment as a pharmacy student or as a practicing pharmacist? Basically, your why. Also, what is one thing you would tell your younger self knowing what you know now? I think I touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear everyone's answer to this question. That is such a great question. Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in on this one because this is my guy, Mr. Barnes there. So I'm gonna chime in on that question. So, I've actually discussed this question with him previously in some conversations, and I'll just share some of my input on it, from my time at my university. So during my time at, the University of Cincinnati, we didn't have a significant Black or African-American population on campus. So, there were times not only did you feel alone, but it got to the point to where you felt lonely. So, really questioning yourself if you actually can accomplish, what you set forth. Once you get into pharmacy school, if you didn't get an undergraduate degree and you're at your P2 or P3 year, it's almost like being out on an island. Like you're all in, you can't really turn back. It's not like you can change your major. So I just remember at those times, when those therapeutics courses started to, really jump on me, it really caused me to dig deep into my faith and to really challenge myself and step forth to the plate and really do whatever is necessary. So whether that called for me to, study as long as possible, have conversations with my professors, asking, stepping out of my comfort zone and studying with individuals who I may not really know. I heard a quote recently that you don't have to be friends with someone to win a championship. So when you look at the late Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, they weren't best friends, but they won multiple championships together. So, that was one thing that I recall intentionally doing, I found individuals in my class who were performing well, and I made friends with them so I could study with them, and I could share information, they could share information with me in order to help me grow. So, just really stepping out of my comfort zone, doing whatever is necessary, and just embracing the challenge, and understanding that it's a process, and it's a journey. Earning your PharmD and even excelling within the profession, years down the line, it's not going to be easy, especially when you're seeking out, high levels of success. You just have to understand that. Try not to get too down on yourself. Understand that it is, sometimes it can take time. Some things happen fast. Some things happen a little bit slower. But just understanding that it is a process, and that you're ultimately in your role to serve people. And when you can understand that, it should make your job that much more enjoyable through the highs and the lows.
Dr. Chijoke, Dr. Keller, do you have any follow-ups to that question?
I do. So I guess my why. So going back to what I said earlier, I'm fresh. I'm a baby pharmacist. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Y'all should be listening to the people smarter than me. But because I'm still forming this, and honestly, what would I say to my previous self is like, what would I say to myself yesterday? As I think about that, it's a lot of things, but I guess I'll circle back to my why. So my first year in residency was a little rough for various reasons. But I think the thing that like kept me going, or like my why, was like one day it just kind of hit me, and it's like, why do you think that, like your parents didn't like go through hard times? Or what do you think happened when like my grandparents, they were the first in their family to go to college, or, whatever the case may be. And I was like, my grandfather was a strong man. And it was just kind of like those genes are inside of me. Like I am that person. That is my blood. So what do I look like around here crying just because, because I don't know. So, I think that was part of it. It's just kind of like going back to that whole, like reminding yourself of who you are. And it's like, that determination or that willpower to like keep going, like it's literally in you, like it's in us as Black people. Like I don't know if anybody has heard of or seen the 15 White Coats, but they went viral like a year ago for all these Bent students at Tulane went and took pictures in front of a slave quarters on a plantation. So actually one of the founders is my line sister, but anyway, their slogan is resilience is in our DNA, and it 100% is. And that oddly kept me going. It just kind of reminded me. And then I guess, what would I say to myself? That was, I don't know, a few months ago. Part of it would be like, there's always like some light at the end of the tunnel. Like no matter how dark the tunnel is, like there is a light. And as much as it sucks and as much as it seems like it's pitch black, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you gotta keep going until you find it. So I think, and as much as that's probably not what myself a few months ago probably wanted to hear, but it's true, and you just gotta like hold on. And I don't know, if you believe in a higher being, pray, faith, talk to your mama, get a hug, something, I don't know. But whatever that can get you through, because you got to find the light.
Yeah, I've got nothing else to add.
All very eloquently spoken. I love the responses to that, because that it's so real. Because I love this question, I'm definitely gonna put it in my little answer. So what inspired me to keep going during my toughest moments. So I actually grew up, I grew up in Stony Creek, Virginia, population roughly like 200 people, very, very small. And like so small that there's not even like stoplights or anything. Like it's very small, like very rural community. Okay. So I grew up on a 500-acre farm and then proceeded to go off to school. Yeah, long story. But anyways, I'll never forget my freshman year. I was a pre-pharmacy major at Hampton. So following up what Dr. Marable said, when you are part of I was part of a 6-year program, so I did not obtain an undergraduate degree. You kind of feel like you don't have any choice but to finish because, okay, if you drop out or you don't complete, it's like, I don't even have an undergrad degree to fall back on. So I'll never forget my freshman year, I was taking biology 105, which is like basic biology, right? I failed like the first 2 tests because I was studying the way I did in high school, which like I could barely study and still get good grades. That's not how it worked for me in college. And after I failed that second exam, I called home and was like, I can't do this. Like, college is clearly not for me. And the first thing I heard from my father and my uncle at the time was, it's either you make it at Hampton or you come back and work on the farm. And I ended up making dean's list that semester because I was like, there's no way I'm going back and working on nobody's farm. So that was my first thing. But then also, I'm the first person on both sides of my family to obtain a doctorate of any sort. So it really, it was more than just me. It was like, I had my parents, my family pouring into me. Like, you can do this, you can do this, even when it felt hard because my mom was a first gen college student and she did not have anyone to go off of. And she did it. And every time it got hard, it's like, Star, imagine how I felt. I had no one to look up to. Like, I had to just go through it myself. And I think about that, where I've had people in my family, whether they went to college or went through some type of hardship, they got through it. My mentors, they speak to me and they say, you know, Star, if it were easy, everyone would do it. I had family members that told me if it was easy, everyone would do it. And when things got really tough, like, I don't even know if I'm going to pass this class tough. It's like, I kept that in mind. When I wanted to change my major, my mom was like, you're not changing your major unless you fail a class. Then we can talk. I never failed a class. So then I became a pharmacist. You have got to keep going, especially for the people who believe in you, who've poured into you. Not that you necessarily owe anything to anybody, but the people that believe in you, like, you deserve to make sure to prove them right. And my why is, like, I wanted to do this since I was 10 years old. And so for me to give up on my 10-year-old self is a disgrace. Like, I had to prove that kid, like, hey, you can do this. And if there's one thing I could tell my younger self is, it's going to get hard. You're going to hate it. Probably a good portion of it, you're just going to hate, but you're going to make it through. And this whole thinking, oh, like trying to talk yourself out of it, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. It's a load of crap. It's crap. You can do it, and you can do it well. You can succeed and do it well. So that's that. Like, yeah.
I have one more thing to add to this. Another thing I would tell myself is, please, please, please take care of your emotional and mental health and lean on those people who you know are there for you. Because when I tell you, sometimes the reaction is to like clam up and cut yourself off away from people, please don't do that. you need to talk to whomever is your most trusted person. That is definitely what I would go back and tell myself. And it is okay to need to talk about it, or dare I say, get therapy. It's all fine. Take care of yourself. So that's my 2 more cents. Yeah.
I love that, Dr. Keller. Take care of yourself. Yes, if you need to cry.
Please cry.
Cry. You will cry. That's fine.
Please cry.
Do what you gotta do, because therapy is bomb. Please get a therapist if you can afford a therapist. If you can cover it, like, which if it is covered with your insurance, get it. Like, I kid you not, I spoke to my mother.
I'll jump in, because I know that with today's conversation, with us exploring the topic of practicing while Black, and I just think about times when I was managing and operating the pharmacy, and the topic just came up of crying and showing emotion, and I just think about me and my image. And I look at Dr. Chijoke as well, both Black men. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're like able to cry in pharmacy. I want to kind of open that up. I want to talk about it, because that's when you're trying to lead a team, is that something that you can do? I don't mind crying now. Work from home. I'll cry all I want.
I'm gonna just insert. I realize it takes a lot to probably cry in front of people, you're in charge of. Mm-hmm. Fine. But the tears can come out at some point, you gotta hold it, but let them out. Don't never let them out. Let them out, in the bathroom.
I'm exaggerating on the cry portion, but I'm just speaking of being emotional. I know other individuals can be emotional, whether that's showing frustration, showing anger, being upset. I know that I always had to be aware of my emotional front when I'm communicating, whether it's with patients, whether it's with my team, superiors. I think these are all important topics that can be discussed in a session like this, because I don't think I've ever talked about that. And when someone brought up crying, it just kind of jumped on my head. So I kind of wanted to see what Dr. Chijoke had to say, maybe about that. Because I know I don't show emotion really at work.
Yeah, I never cried, but I know that there was one time that I can think about where I felt like the microaggressions hitting hard, where like everything I was suggesting, it was like they were looking at me like I was stupid, and I knew I was right, and later I was confirmed to be right. But like in that moment, like I sat down, like if someone had asked me like, hey, do you want to go like talk about the work we got to go do? I was like, no, I'm good. And I was like, nah, man, let's go talk. And it was another Black dude. As soon as we got in the room, like I just started venting. So I think for me, it's the venting that needs to happen. Let all that steam out, because like oftentimes when we're in those situations, we'll bottle it in. And then like, well, I would rather not have this argument and blow things up and then deal with all that fallout. So I'm just gonna bottle it and be quiet and then talk about it on my IG story or something. In that moment, I needed to go and talk, because otherwise, like I was gonna be sitting in that room across from the person that was offending me and just be steaming.
I'll chime in just really quick, and then I'll let you go, Dr. Keller. When I said cry, I meant cry at home. Personally, I would cry at home, like, or I kid you not, for 6 years, the entire 6 years I was at Hampton University, I called my mother every single day, probably 2 or 3 times a day. Black moms love them. So with that being said, I have had moments at work where I felt like offended. Very early in my career, I learned the hard way. It is not good to, like, it is very easy as a Black woman, an African American woman, if you are angry, show any type of disdain about anything, immediately you are the angry Black woman. Immediately. Doesn't matter if you were right, it doesn't matter. It is, you come off as the angry Black woman. I have tried to defend myself against certain things, spoken up about things that I felt very passionately about, and immediately was like, oh, Star, calm down. Meanwhile, I'm not yelling. I'm speaking in a very monotone. I think I'm coming off as professional as possible. It's Star, calm down.
And I think that's what I was getting at as it relates to just being emotional, because I feel like our counterparts are allowed to display a very wide spectrum of emotions, whereas we sometimes have to, kind of stay in a certain box. I know I have to be aware of, how I'm positioning myself. I'm tall, so I might be like in front of someone and they may perceive that as me attempting to threaten them. If I'm not smiling, maybe I'm angry, like you said. I'm just not smiling. I got a 13-hour shift today. I don't want to smile right now. Maybe, around 8 o'clock, I might start smiling, but not right now. But I will be curious to know if other individuals, that are currently on the call, if they've experienced challenges, managing the expectation of displaying emotion in a professional setting as a Black professional. Just be sure to unmute yourself.
Yeah, for me, for sure. My entire life, I've got the comment that I don't smile for the most part until people talk to me, and then I'm smiling, right? But also, even like receiving feedback, I naturally can have a very stoic face, right? So, which makes the other parties uncomfortable because they're expecting me to fight them oftentimes. But just from being in the military, I'm used to hearing things and having to just be okay with it. If someone's telling me something that's exciting, I'm still like, cool. If someone's telling me something that is like, hey, you might get fired tomorrow, it's like, okay, cool, I'll deal with it. That hasn't happened, but and I think it's always like the other party's uncomfortable with that silence for me. But I haven't had too much of the angry Black man situation.
So I think that just like the angry Black man, like what Star was saying, is equivalent to the angry Black woman, right? So whereas, yes, it's probably more acceptable than it is for a Black man for a Black woman to express emotions in her workplace. However, I think the crying or showing emotion in general gives to an equal image in the workplace. Like, if I cry because I'm frustrated, or I cry because I'm upset, or my tears come out of whatever, like I personally still feel I'm still viewed as weaker or sensitive or an emotional wreck, or like my emotions are just a lot or something like that. And is it slightly different for men? Then yeah, I'm not gonna like deny that. But I feel like from a professional standpoint, I feel like it's almost a line that needs to be drawn, because I do think that there should be some room in the workplace for that, because as Dr. Edlow was saying, it is healthy to express your feelings and to cry. But at a certain point, there needs to be a line drawn where, you might be able to shed a tear or two at work, but you really need to have that good cleansing cry at home in your bed, So I think that there needs to be a medium, like a middle ground, because I think that it's not healthy for men to always feel like that they can't express their emotions, or they feel uncomfortable, or they feel like their image is going to be changed because they did show emotion. unfortunately, but I do get that that is the way it is now. So I don't know. I feel like you should change the standard, Dr. Marable. Start shutting a tier at work. Just one tier, just one.
Work from home helps. Turn the camera off. What you doing?
I definitely like there was a situation at work actually where I was speaking to a coworker. It was a meeting, it was in a meeting type space. And I remember saying things and I'm going back and forth with a coworker. And she was not Black. I feel like I'm being very professional. I'm saying my piece, all the things. She just starts crying out of like nowhere. I'm not being disrespectful or any of the things, but she just starts crying. And then I feel like I'm getting frustrated. And then I felt like she was like her tears were welcomed. But then it kind of seemed like I was being the attacker. So when I felt like I'm being offended, like I'm getting emotional, it's like, oh, Star, like, just like you need to stop. And I'm like, okay, so she can cry, but I can't cry though.
And that's an unfortunate stereotype that, that we may fall into. But, just understanding that we have the ability, we have the power, we have the resources to shape that narrative in a way that fits us. Being a Black professional, Black pharmacist, we're not a monolith. Like, we all have emotions. We're all different. We have different forms of culture. We're all unique, which is amazing. And people need to understand that. So I think it's always important that, whatever platform that you're on, whatever group that you're a part of, that you're aligned with, that you continue to press that narrative forward and show people like who we are and what we have to offer. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the call, we only make up about 4.5%, but we can be the small group, but we can also be very mighty and on the forefront to create changes in the communities that we're a part of.
And I definitely agree. I'm going to end up quoting Taraji P. Henson on this. The strong Black man, the strong Black woman, that is such a toxic mindset because it makes us, when you say strong Black man, strong Black woman, it makes us superhuman. Like we are not incapable. Like we cannot have emotions. We cannot have human activity, human responses to things. Black people, people of color are not superhuman. And so, yes, in the workplace, like Dr. Keller said, there should be a line. There should be some wiggle room, but there is a line because sometimes emotions can be unprofessional and being more stoic is more professional. Some people like myself early in my career, I realized I do not have a poker face. So my emotions were just on my face. You know exactly how I felt because you can look at my face. You can look at my eyes. You know exactly how I feel. So the not having a poker faces are considered professional. Having your emotions on your face, I had to learn based on how things can be perceived, like no emotions, you were supposed to just a blank page is more professional. I had to say my little 2 cents about that. Let's see, geez, there's so many questions in here, but we will take a quick break and do a poll because there's a wonderful poll in here. So does everyone see the poll? Oh. Now, so as a Black professional, how important is service to your professional journey? If you can see this poll, please answer the poll. And we will discuss the results.
I think that's a great question to ask, as it relates to us as Black professionals. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is going to feel that sense of duty or the sense of responsibility to have to, circle back and to help those who may not have the ability to uplift themselves. And it's I feel like that's just a difficult conversation to have because we all do come from different backgrounds. We're not all the same. We don't always have the same views, but it's just it's good to know and to be aware of that. If you maybe overlook certain things, as maybe you haven't been able to give back and you haven't identified it. So I think it's always a good point to do self-reflection, because I feel that being able to serve and to give back and give from within is an extremely important duty in your journey.
Okay, I think 90% of individuals have responded to the poll. So critically important, 89%, somewhat important, 11%. Panelists, what are your viewpoints on how important is service to your professional journey? I personally think it's extremely important, whether that is mentorship, whether that is service in professional organizations like NAPA. Service can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Giving back, however you feel, whatever is your definition, I think is extremely important. Panelists, please chime in.
That's kind of where I get my most reward from, honestly, is doing service. In my role right now, I'm doing a lot of service, like out in the community, a lot of boots on the ground type of work, and it's super rewarding. So for me, it's important. I knew I enjoyed doing a lot of service, like as a student. And then my mindset is, if there wasn't anybody to go back and do service or give back, I wouldn't be here. Like, I wouldn't be who I am. Like, if my mentors decided, no, I'm good, I'm just going to go on my career, not mentor a student coming behind me, then I don't get here, So I think it's a cycle that has to continue, because it just doesn't work if the cycle doesn't continue. So 100%. I would like there to be more of little, me's out there, using the word me very loosely, but like, I want other people to come behind me, other pharmacists, to be inspired and to be motivated or whatever. So if that happens by me, having a talk with somebody every now and then so be it. So
yeah, be the change that you want to see. Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any follow-ups to that, Dr. Chijoke?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's important, because when we talk about all these organizations, whether it's NPHA, SNAFA, APHA, ASHP, those all run by people volunteering their time to do service to run those organizations. And oftentimes as students, we're the benefactors of, we benefit from those organizations, whether it's scholarships, whether it's mentorship, whether it's job opportunities. And then, unfortunately for a lot of us, after we graduate, we kind of leave all that behind and say, okay, someone else can handle that for the next generation. So I think, like, as we move forward, whether you get involved for a year or your lifetime, like, having the heart to give back and do that service, whether it's precepting students at your job, or mentoring that intern that is rotating with someone else, or just volunteering your time to sit on a webinar like this. I think that's critical, because even if you impact one person and help their trajectory, that's better than the 100 voices that they're hearing from their guidance counselors, et cetera, that told them, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this anymore.
Mm. Thank you so much. We have one more question, and then we will end our webinar today. Just a quick thank you to every single person who has tuned in and is still on the call. So I love our last question. I think it's good to end on a really good note. So we have a question. I wanted to ask you about transitioning to a different realm of pharmacy. I'm a 4 years in retail and want to get into ambulatory care, managed care. Any advice to navigate into transitioning? And I feel like the perfect person to start off this conversation is Dr. Chijoke.
Yeah. For me, like I'm just not afraid to shoot that shot, to be honest. Like I'll go on LinkedIn, especially if it says easy apply. I'm clicking that button and we're gonna see what happens. But yeah, aside from that, I don't think it's always a matter of like, okay, let me go get this certificate or this degree or this fellowship or whatever. Like sometimes it's as simple as adding a recruiter for the companies that you're interested in on LinkedIn. When they post stuff, ask them a question, and or leveraging the network you already have, because especially if people work corporate jobs or jobs that are run by a corporation, there's a good chance they have a referral portal. And I think that's one of the most underutilized things in our community, where we know people that work at BMS or the VA or Novartis or wherever else. And then we see a job and we're like, okay, I want to work with them, and we just apply. Meanwhile, we could have used them as a referral, got them their referral bonus, let them have a nice dinner. And then, we also got our CV and resume actually looked at. So if you're thinking about transitioning, number one, if you know someone at that employer, ask them for the referral. Or even if it's just a matter of typing their name in when you do the application. Two, when you're on LinkedIn, actually use it for networking, and add people that can help your career. And then three, I would say like going to in-person events when they come back more often, and just talking to people, because you never know what's going to be available.
Panelists, does anyone have anything to add to that? Wonderfully said, Dr. Chijoke.
Yeah, I think Dr. Chijoke hit all of the points right on point. But I'm a firm believer in that you should always be networking. So whether you're, within your professional role, whether you're in service within your community, or if you're at, special events, you should always be having conversations with your peers and letting them know, what type of value that you have the ability to add, finding out about opportunities. So you don't have to necessarily be, all out in the open and letting them know that you're on the job hunt, but you want to have those conversations to find out, what's taking place. I know within my team, anytime that there's an open role, we're looking to get that role filled as quickly as possible. So, and like it was just mentioned, with that internal referral program, I mean, that is something that we greatly lean upon. I've assisted in getting individuals hired, and it's always appreciated from the individual who was hired to the individuals who I report to. Everybody is satisfied in that process, because typically when you have like a job posting, you'll get hundreds of applications that come in, and many of those individuals who apply have very similar backgrounds. PharmD, they may have a few years of experience, they may have some professional service opportunities in their past, but for the most part, it's very similar in what they bring to the table. So you have to try to find different ways to get that edge, and being able to form like strong bonds and a strong network will just help to give you that, that push forward, which is important when you're trying to get your name to the top of that stack to be reviewed. And of course, you want to make sure that you have those proper accolades and skills. And once you get into that interview, then now the work really begins as to how you sell yourself and communicate what you have to offer. So networking.
Definitely a piggyback off of that. I definitely agree with all of the points that have been made. I transitioned, so I graduated in May of 2018. By August 2019, I was starting a new job with my current position with Indian Health Service. So keep in mind, this is a federal job, extremely competitive. And how I felt like I did it, a lot of faith, a lot of prayer, higher power, all that, first and foremost. But I started my career off in retail. And all I kept hearing was, it's so hard to leave retail. Once you're in it, you're stuck. That's not true. It is not true. If anyone says that, it's not true. I work in ambulatory care. And so I decided when I had a rotation at the FDA that I wanted to work in a federal space. So that was my goal. I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave pharmacy practice or not. So I was like, okay, well, let me stay. So the thing that fit the bill was Indian Health Service. I networked with past alumni, like people who graduated from Hampton University, going all the way back. Everybody knows somebody. And that it's so powerful. All I had to do was just tell a couple friends, hey, I think I'm thinking about Indian Health Service. Oh, hey, I know someone who works for Indian Health Service. I'm going to hook you up with them. I'm going to let them know that I know you and that you're good people, all that. Those people know somebody. Those people know somebody. And then next thing you know, you have an interview because someone that you know through a friend put in a good word for you. It is very important when you are like looking for jobs that someone internally can vouch for you, can speak up for you, because you are not in the room. Who is there to speak on your behalf? Because of SNAFA, that's why I say so well about SNAFA. And I actually think she's on the call, Dr. Kellyanne Cobb. We became friends while we were both on the SNAFA circuit. I spoke to her just venting one day about, I hate my job. I want another one. I'm thinking about IHS. And she's like, I have a friend actually who works for Indian Health Service. Y'all should talk. She at the time was the deputy chief pharmacist of another site. She called the site I ended up applying to and interviewing at, and I currently work at, to put in a good word for me. So when I say advice, any advice I have about transitioning, apply. If you get rejected from a couple places, don't let it stop you too much. It may hurt your feelings, but keep going. Rejection is just direction. Like I think over the course of the time I was applying, I got rejected from I think I had some emails went cold, probably about 14 rejections in my inbox, probably. I was applying everywhere. You keep going because somebody's going to say yes. You get 100 no's, somebody's going to say yes. So when you ask about navigating, like transitioning, do not be afraid to apply. Don't count yourself out before someone tells you no. They have to tell you no for you to be counted out. And then even still, you have to keep going, because if you know what you want to do, you keep going after it, somebody's going to eventually say yes. Go to those conferences. That's another thing. I went to an Indian Health Service conference at the request of my friend. We ended up becoming friends. Go to those conferences. Tell everybody that you know that you could possibly go through your LinkedIn. Somebody knows somebody where you're trying to work. So reach out, send a DM on LinkedIn, a professional one, obviously. Utilize your connections, network, and just, you cannot give up, especially when it gets hard. Somebody may say no, but somebody's going to say yes. I think that is, that's our last question of the night. Thank you everybody who has stayed on the call. This was a very, very lively conversation, and I am grateful to have been the host moderator of this event. Everybody who tuned in, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting NAFA, supporting NPN, discovering how we all practice while Black. The Modern Pharmacist Unscripted. It has been a pleasure. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.